to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus. On today's headlines, a Myanmar court jailed Aung San Suu Kyi for 6 years for corruption, taking the ousted leader's prison time to 17 years. President Bongbong Marcos Jr. is looking at teaming up with the private sector to bring down sugar prices in the country. Dutch judges will deliver their verdict on November 17 in the trial of 4 suspects accused of downing Malaysian Airlines flight MH17 over Ukraine in 2014. And the Republic of Korea Air Force's ROCAF 53rd Air Demonstration Group, also known as the Black Eagles, performed over the Basa Air Base, Florida Blanca, Pampanga, highlighting the strong relations between the Philippines and South Korea. First in our news, the Myanmar junta court jailed Aung San Suu Kyi for 6 years for corruption. According to a source close to the case said, taking the ousted leader's prison time to 17 years. Suu Kyi, 77, has been detained since the general toppled her government in a coup on February 1 of last year, ending the Southeast Asian country's brief period of democracy. She has since been hit with a series of charges, including violating the Official Secrets Act, corruption, and electoral fraud. She faces decades in jail if convicted on all counts. Each charge carried a maximum of 15 years in jail. Suu Kyi was sentenced to 3 years for each, but 3 of the sentences would be served concurrently. The Nobel laureate had already been sentenced to 11 years in jail for corruption, incitement against the military, breaching COVID-19 rules, and breaking a telecommunications law. Journalists have been barred from attending the court hearings, and Suu Kyi's lawyers have been banned from speaking to the media. Many of her political allies have also been arrested since the coup, with one chief minister sentenced to 75 years in jail.
We condemn all human rights violations and unlawful violence.
Meanwhile, EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell condemned the sentencing as unjust and called for Suu Kyi's immediate release. Take a look. He said in a tweet, and I quote, "I condemn the unjust sentence of Aung San Suu Kyi to an additional 6 years of detention," Borrell wrote on Twitter, calling on the Myanmar regime to immediately and unconditionally release her. He also urged the Asian nation's military junta to release all political prisoners and respect the will of the people. Suu Kyi, 77, was detained after generals overthrew her government in February last year, ending Myanmar's brief period of democracy. She has since been hit with a series of charges, faces decades in jail if convicted on all counts. Meanwhile, Myanmar's ruling junta has moved to restrict political parties from meeting foreigners or international organizations ahead of an election expected next year. The junta's stacked Union Election Commission said that the country's 92 registered political parties would have to ask for permission if they wish to meet foreign organizations or individuals. Political parties need to respect the law. If they fail to do so, their party's registration will be dissolved, according to the commission in a statement. The body also accused foreign embassies and international non-governmental organizations of interfering in the 2020 polls, resulting in fraud. Political parties in Myanmar were scathing of the new edict. Former NLD lawmaker Saw Thuratun said it was undemocratic and didn't respect the right to freedom of association. The Southeast Asian nation has been plunged into turmoil, and its economy is in tatters since the February 2021 coup, which ousted Aung San Suu Kyi's government. The military alleged widespread voter fraud during November 2020 polls, which Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy Party won in a landslide, although international observers said the election was largely free and fair. Meanwhile, the UN's new special envoy for Myanmar began her first trip to the country Tuesday, a day after a junta court sentence ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi to 6 more years in jail for corruption. Noy Lin Hazer will focus on addressing the deteriorating situation and immediate concerns, as well as other priority areas of her mandate, according to a UN statement late on Monday. It didn't give details on who she would meet among the junta's top leadership or whether she would seek to meet Suu Kyi. Hazer is expected to hold meetings in the military-built capital, Naypyidaw, according to a diplomatic source who did not give further details. Diplomatic efforts to resolve the crisis, led by the UN and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations regional bloc, have made little headway, with the generals refusing to engage with opponents. Last month, the junta stoked renewed international condemnation when it executed Pyo Zea Tau, a former lawmaker from Suu Kyi's National League for Democratic Party, for offenses under anti-terrorism laws. Last week, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged the international community to reject the junta's sham elections planned for next year.
And we strongly encourage the international community not to endorse the regime's plans for sham elections next year. They can be neither free nor fair under present conditions.
Also last year, it canceled the results of the 2020 poll, saying it had uncovered more than 11 million instances of alleged voter fraud. Suu Kyi has been detained since the coup and faces an eclectic raft of charges that could see her jailed for more than 150 years. In tonight's other news, UK police identified human remains found following a fire at a disused mill in northern England 3 months ago as one of the 4 Vietnamese men missing since the blaze. Greater Manchester Police identified one of the 3 sets of remains as belonging to 31-year-old Wok Van Nguyen. The building in Oldham near Manchester was damaged beyond repair after the May 7th fire, and demolition workers found the remains of at least 3 victims on July 23. Police last week released the names of 4 Vietnamese men who have been missing since the blaze. They said that Wok Van Nguyen had been in regular contact with his wife, telling her he was in a mill. According to the Manchester Evening News, the mill site was suspected of being used as a cannabis farm. Dutch judges will deliver their verdict on November 17 in the trial of 4 suspects accused of downing Malaysian Airlines flight MH17 over Ukraine in 2014, according to a court. 3 Russians and a Ukrainian, who all remain at large, are accused of supplying the missile that intercepted the jet as it flew from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, killing all 298 people on board. Prosecutors say the plane was shot down on July 17, 2014 by a Russian-made Buk missile fired from territory in eastern Ukraine occupied by pro-Moscow separatists. Dutch prosecutors in December called for life terms for all 4 of the men on trial: Russians Igor Girkin, Sergei Dubinsky, and Oleg Pulatov, and Ukrainian Leonid Karchenko. Pulatov is the only accused with legal representation, and all 4 have refused to appear in court, insisting they are innocent. Pulatov's lawyer said prosecutors failed to show that a Russian-supplied book brought down the jetliner, saying there were gaps in the prosecution's case. The Philippine Army Special Forces Regiment, Airborne SFRA, and the U.S. Army Special Operations Command Pacific, or SOCPAC, formally started the month-long Balanced Piston 2022-3 exercises geared at enhancing interoperability between the 2 elite units in Palawan. PA spokesperson Colonel Cerces Trinidad said SFRA and SOCPAC teams will conduct bilateral training drills until September 16 of this year at the Joint Maritime Law Enforcement Training Center in Honda Bay, Puerto Princesa, and the headquarters of the 18th Special Forces Riverine Company in Punta Baja in Rizal Town. The bilateral exercise will focus on long-range marksmanship, combat marksmanship, close-quarter combat, small unit tactics, unconventional warfare, maritime operations, and a full mission profile or culmination exercise. Balanced Piston is a regular bilateral training exercise between the Special Operation Forces of the two countries, which started in the early 2000s. Sugar Regulatory Administration or SRA Administrator Hermenegildo Serafica has resigned from the post following the controversial sugar importation order since the approval of President Bongbong Marcos Jr. Serafica's resignation was confirmed by Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles in a press statement today. Cruz Angeles said the resignation of Serafica as well as SRA board member Roland Beltran has been accepted. Their resignation came in the wake of the unauthorized signing of Sugar Order 4, a resolution allowing the importation of 300,000 metric tons of sugar. Last week, Agriculture Chief of Staff and Undersecretary for Operations Leocadio Sebastian also tendered his resignation to Marcos, who also sits as head of the Department of Agriculture, following the sugar importation fiasco. Malacanang earlier said the issuance of SO4 was illegal and unauthorized, as it was rejected by the president, considering the administration's thrust to fulfill a balancing act of securing affordable and adequate supply for the consumers, as well as benefiting the local producers. President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. is looking at teaming up with the private sector to bring down sugar prices in the country. During a consultation with officials of the Philippine Chamber of Food Manufacturers Incorporated, or PCFMI, Marcos said he is seeking a concession with traders to tame sugar prices. He said, quote, "The concern is the supply right now, and I'll make sure that there is sufficient supply in the country so that you can operate at full capacity." Marcos said he is also eyeing direct importation by food manufacturers as part of emergency measures to address current industry concerns, and this will need the approval of the Sugar Regulatory Administration, which he chairs. He acknowledged that despite the need for the country to increase sugar production in the future, the current pressing concerns of food producers must be addressed. Marcos described the country's sugar supply problems as worrisome and assured that government will exert efforts to increase supply of the commodity. In other news, the Philippines and France are eyeing to boost development cooperation in agriculture and green energy, among other areas, according to the Department of Finance. Finance Secretary Benjamin Diokno met on Monday with French Ambassador to the Philippines, Michel Boccoz. "We have many projects in the pipeline with France in the areas of infrastructure, maritime security, disaster risk management, agriculture, green energy, education, and climate change," Diokno said in a tweet following his meeting with the French ambassador. At the courtesy call meeting, Diokno expressed interest in two countries having more cooperation projects in agriculture. President Bongbong Marcos Jr. is concurrently the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture. The DOF said the French government is currently working on several agriculture-related projects in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, while French companies are also leading some local agricultural projects such as dairy and rice production. A team of experts from France is also coming to study the African swine fever outbreak in the country. Oil prices extended losses today after weak U.S. and Chinese data reinforced recession expectations. Though equities won support from hopes the figures will allow central banks to temper their pace of interest rate hikes. Stock traders tracked a Wall Street advance led by tech firms, thanks to an increase in bets that the Federal Reserve will not lift borrowing costs by 75 basis points for a third straight meeting next month. Signs that Iran is moving towards a nuclear deal added to the downward pressure on prices, with an agreement seen allowing the country to restart sales into the world market. Analysts said Tehran could provide 2.5 million barrels a day, giving a much-needed shot in the arm to supplies which have been hammered by sanctions on Russia in response to its invasion of Ukraine. And on Tuesday, Asia built on Wall Street's upbeat performance. Hong Kong and Shanghai rose after Beijing cut rates on Monday as the world's #2 economy struggles to recover from a plunge in activity caused by extended COVID lockdowns. Sydney, Seoul, Taipei, Manila, Jakarta, and Wellington were also up, though Tokyo was flat and Singapore dipped. Still, analysts warned that while equities are enjoying a bounce, the economic outlook could keep them subdued or even fall back again. Meanwhile, Thailand's economy grew 2.5% in the second quarter as returning foreign tourists failed to offset high inflation and concerns over regional tensions. The country's main economic agency saying this on Monday. Economist Charles Keng-chon from the Capricorn Research Center characterized the results as a mixed bag, with the tourism boost failing to lift growth. He said, "I think that is because inflation hit a 14-year high in June, so it's a drag on sending both in the household sector and business." Inflation in the month of June hit 7.7% and was at 6.5% for the quarter, according to the NESDC. The impact of the Russia-Ukraine war and Taiwan tensions were also a worry, according to Charles, affecting supply chains. Southeast Asia's second-largest economy was hit hard during the pandemic, though visitor numbers are slowly improving with the relaxation of travel rules since May. Thailand's National Economic and Social Development Council, or NESDC, warned the Ukraine war and now tension over Taiwan could put any economic recovery at risk. The agency said that gross domestic product rose 2.5% in April to June compared to the same period to a year ago, well below the anticipated growth of 3%. The NESDC also revised the expected full-year growth rate from 2.5 to 3.5% to 2.7 to 3.2%. And the news continues here on Eagle News. Here on ASEAN in Focus, we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. His Excellency Luc Veron, European Union Ambassador to the Philippines, is visiting Siargao Island from the 15th to the 18th of this month to monitor EU humanitarian aid and development projects and to discuss the recovery with local officials and communities. This is 8 months following Typhoon Odette, or Typhoon Rai, and the fourth outreach mission of Ambassador Veron to see realities on the ground while observing health protocols. Since last year, he went to development programs in the Cordillera Administrative Region, Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, and Quezon Province. Ambassador Veron also paid tribute to the humanitarian aid workers and partners of the EU on the island. Ambassador Veron is visiting Caridad Elementary School in Pilar to talk with school officials and communities who have benefited from programs such as the education in emergencies, shelter repair, water, sanitation and hygiene, and protection-related interventions of the EU. After the typhoon hit the island, the EU provided a multi-purpose learning space as a temporary venue for teaching and learning activities. Together with humanitarian aid partners, he's also going to launch the photographic exhibition, The Last Mile, which aims to raise awareness about the impact of typhoon on communities in Siargao and other affected provinces, and the achievements and challenges encountered by NGOs and humanitarian aid organizations in reaching the most vulnerable families in the island. The EU ambassador is also leading a ceremony to highlight a solar community-based island tourism and livelihood energizer platform, or SMILE project, implemented by the World Wide Fund in Anjawan Island. This SMILE project provides 24/7 renewable energy, access to 4 remote island communities, develop sustainable ecotourism opportunities, and help mitigate the impact of climate change. The Secretary General of ASEAN, Datu Lim Jokoy, and the Ambassador of the European Union to ASEAN, Igor Dresmans, officially launched the Bike 45 Ride cycling event in Jakarta as ASEAN and EU celebrate 45 years of strategic partnership. Representatives from ASEAN, EU delegations, and EU member states marked the occasion with a symbolic ride from the ASEAN Secretariat to the premises of the EU delegation in Jakarta. Let's listen in.
We wanted to highlight with this bike ride 2 things. First of all, that we are 45 years, I almost said married, 45 years of dialogue partners. And the second thing that we wanted to highlight is that, of course, the one thing to emphasize here is the sustainable green partnership that too we've been building over the years. We partner on the protection of peatlands, we partner on the protection of biodiversity, center in the Philippines. Since recently we have a very exciting project on smart green cities, which you will learn all about.
Cycling, taking public transport and other eco-friendly alternatives are small but concrete steps that each of us can take to reduce air pollution. Climate action is one of the Philippines' priorities as country coordinator for the ASEAN-EU dialogue relations. Climate action and environmental sustainability are also central to ASEAN's priorities, as these are in line with ASEAN's commitments on the implementation of the ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community Blueprint 2025 and the Declaration on ASEAN Post-2015 Environmental Sustainability and Climate Change Agenda. ASEAN's commitment to environmental sustainability and climate action also finds itself in several ASEAN statements and action plans, including our recently adopted Plan of Action to implement the ASEAN-EU strategic partnership. Our POA includes action lines on addressing regional and global environmental challenges and promoting sustainable development, including through support for capacity building and tackling growing challenges associated with climate change, extreme weather events, and biodiversity loss and pollution.
We are tasked to address one of the most difficult challenges. It's to battle the climate crisis. And this is one of the purposes of the Smart and Green ASEAN Cities, is to help to assist Southeast Asian cities by working together with the European cities to enhance the planning and governance capacity in order to enable cities in Southeast Asia to promote green agendas. Like one of the examples is to promote a greener mobility, and I think symbolically the activity that we did in the morning, cycling, is one of the best ways to represent the green agendas.
Prior to flagging off the start of the Bike 45 ride, ASEAN Secretary General Datu Lim Jokoy in his opening remarks noted that the activity not only serves as a credible platform to create public awareness of the work of ASEAN-EU, but also a vital form of effort to encourage more people towards the shift for more sustainable transportations. The Bike 45 ride event is a virtual cycling competition organized from August 13 to the 11th of September this year for all ASEAN and EU citizens residing in the 10 ASEAN member states. Participants can take part as an individual or in a group of up to 5 participants to complete a total distance of 45 kilometers within the race period. And if you're looking for consumer protection in ASEAN, you can visit the website of the ASEAN Coordinating Committee on Consumer Protection, or ACCP. Let's take a look at what this is all about.
Are you looking for information about consumer protection in ASEAN? Visit the official website of the ASEAN Committee on Consumer Protection, or the ACCP, at aseanconsumer.org. With up-to-date information and resources, the ACCP website is administered by the ASEAN Secretariat. It offers a user-friendly one-stop portal with dedicated pages for consumers, businesses, regulators, and the wider interested public who wish to learn more about consumer protection systems and developments in ASEAN. On the regional pages, visitors can find out about major commitments and achievements of the ACCP. This includes the ASEAN Strategic Action Plan on Consumer Protection, or ASAP-CP 2016 through 2025, as well as the ASEAN High-Level Principles on Consumer Protection, which chart the path for regional dialogue and cooperation on strengthening consumer protection both within and across ASEAN countries. The ACCP website also provides general overviews on consumer protection concepts, principles, and stakeholders. On the country pages, updates about national consumer protection authorities, relevant laws, and other key documents are available, along with news and events. Consumers who intend to file a complaint against a trader in a different ASEAN country can do so through an innovative feature with just a few clicks and a simple online form. The feature allows for easy tracking and automatic referral to national consumer protection authorities of the country in which the trader is located. Similarly, visitors can check the ASEAN Product Alerts page for products that have been recalled or banned from the market. On the Resources page, publications and other media, such as guidelines, policy digests, handbooks, infographics, and videos, can be accessed and used as the basis of consumer campaigns or law reforms. Finally, through the new e-learning system, visitors can familiarize themselves with selected consumer protection topics and learn how to champion consumer rights. The e-learning is self-paced and available free of charge to registered users. Explore this and other sections of the ACCP website to stay current about what is happening in the region in the area of consumer protection.
And finally, in our news, the Republic of Korea Air Force's ROCA 53rd Air Demonstration Group, also known as the Black Eagles, performed over the Basa Air Base, Florida Blanca in Pampanga, highlighting the strong relations between the Philippines and South Korea. Take a look. In an interview, Philippine Air Force spokesperson Colonel Maynard Mariano said AT-50Bs, the aerobatic version of the Mach 1.5 capable FA-50PH, would be treating Filipino air enthusiasts with their maneuvers over the skies of Basa Air Base. The Department of National Defense officer in charge, Jose Faustino Jr., described the air show as a heart-pounding and multi-sensory experience, which, quote, gave us a feel of how advanced jet technology is, inspiring more to inspire the same for our Philippine Air Force. Ahead of the actual performance, the Black Eagles conducted a final rehearsal at the Basa Air Base last Saturday, which was witnessed by dozens of spectators. The team has been performing over the skies of the United Kingdom, Poland, and Egypt as part of their world tour this year. The Black Eagles permanent team was formed on December 12, 1994 and flew 6 Cessna A-37B Dragonfly airplanes. The team disbanded temporarily after the 2007 Seoul Air Show and reformed upon the arrival of their new T-50B in 2010. Ties between the Philippines and South Korea have been good since Manila deployed a sizable contingent to help Seoul in the Korean War from 1950 to 53. Now, this show highlights the 73-year-long diplomatic relations between the Philippines and South Korea. And that's it for today's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay updated about the ASEAN region and beyond. Thank you for joining us. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.